Tune in the art of white calling, where magic lessons unfolding, from Abbey Road to solo unfolding.
Hello and welcome to Vectisfabber, a new YouTube channel to boldly go where the JSD postulate chose to avoid. I think the JSD postulate is quite entitled to be taken seriously. But let's remember it is no more than an opinion. Some may share it, others may disagree. The Carl A. Tyler book has been suggested as a reason, possibly a primary reason, why the JSD postulate was never adopted at the time. I think it is about time that some sort of formal refutation, labeled with a silly but respectable sounding title, made its way into the limited public domain of this forum. I emphasize that the Vectisfabber verdict, too, is an opinion and, by definition, is every bit as valid as the JSD postulate. And also every bit as subject to disagreement. So here goes. The Vectisfabber verdict. I am a first-generation Beatles fan. I remember hearing Love Me Do on the radio, and seeing them perform Please Please Me on Thank Your Lucky Stars. I was 11. I am now 72. I have been a Beatles fan for 61 years, and counting. The Beatles made upwards of 200 recordings. Their commercial success from 1962 to date is evidence that the positive opinion of the public towards the quality of those recordings borders on factual. The group contributions, as opposed to individual contributions, to those recordings were a key component of their success. The fact that for discrete creative personalities were joined in common purpose meant that no single personality exercised total dominance, accepting that there were times when one member or another appeared to be in the ascendant. The group creativity was a central part of the group output from the very start to the very end, notwithstanding that, as time went on, the four members developed in different directions despite having started from the same place. This led to a wonderfully diverse discography with, paradoxically, a unified feel to it. There are clear lines of delineation between Beatles and solo recordings, even though there is a soft transition compositionally, i.e. many early solo compositions gestated under the Beatles umbrella. The hard transition applies to recordings. The key distinction applying to solo recordings is the absence of group contributions participation. Beatles group recordings involving only one Beatle still enjoyed group participation by way of constructive critical input. As the solo careers began, overlapping with the end of the group, all four Beatles adopted specific approaches to their individual work with a view to making statements as to their individuality. John, I'm not a Beatle anymore, I'm angry, I'm in pain, and I'm with Yoko. Paul, I'm at home down on the farm doing homemade stuff. George, I'm discharging my musical constipation and I'm doing it my way. Ringo, I'm making a couple of LPs of stuff the Beatles would never have done. It was entirely reasonable and appropriate for them to take these approaches. The group collaborative approach applied throughout the group's recording life. Afterwards, George and Ringo immediately collaborated with others, albeit under their individual personal directions. Paul didn't, and John creatively only involved Yoko, to an unknown extent. The group collaborative approach was a great strength of the group catalogue, that was now absent, especially with John and Paul. The quality of the group output has never been seriously questioned as an overall body of work. Not perfect by any means, but such solid quality that, 60+ years later, it has never been out of print, and material rejected at the time is still being released. The JSD postulate thingy relates to McCartney's solo work alone. The Vectisfabber verdict will address McCartney's solo work alone. For the purpose of discussion, I'll skip the singles and look only at the albums McCartney, Ram, Wings Wild Life, and Red Rose Speedway. The starting point demands a reminder of McCartney's role in the Beatles' career and, especially, Revolver, Pepper and Abbey Road, on all of which his material benefited from the collaboration of the others, just as their material benefited from his collaboration. He released McCartney. Despite having some worthwhile music, an approach which some have called funky, wild, and free, on the undemonstrated assumption that this was a good thing per se, came across as haphazard, shambolic, unfinished, and clearly showing the absence of collaborators who would apply the editing his solo career has shown he so obviously needs. He released Ram. This was an improvement in that it was more polished. He still needed someone to say, more work needed. This isn't good enough. He formed Wings and released Wings Wild Life. It is difficult to believe that this truly execrable album came from half of Lennon-McCartney, perhaps the main force behind Pepper and Abbey Road. The material is compositionally weak, poorly arranged and performed, unnecessarily long, and short measure and poor value. I won't say he hasn't done worse, but, at the time, this was shockingly bad. His new band members were obviously unable to say, more work needed. This isn't good enough. He released Red Rose Speedway. This was a noticeable improvement, but it still contained more duds than were acceptable. He still needed John Lennon to exercise critical quality control. I had these albums on vinyl, and I have them on CD, and I played them a lot in the days, weeks, months after their release. I formed these opinions, I came to this verdict, if you will, at the time, and I haven't changed my mind to any significant extent in the half a century since. Everyone has their own opinion, of course, but I think mine were fairly typical of views at the time. I accept that the passage of time allows reassessment in the wider world. I had the first edition of Car Tyler, and the updated edition. I have always enjoyed it, although it has been some years since I read it cover to cover. I agree with some of the opinions, I disagree with others. I have never changed the slightest smidge of an opinion as a result of their, or any other, opinion. I can't speak for how others may or may not modify their opinions as a result of reading critiques. To summarize, the great strength of the Beatles was their collaborative approach to creating their music. McCartney's case would appear to suggest that the whole was greater than the sum of the parts.